Well, this movie, I followed your career for so long. It just started off as recording wrestling matches, and they were always entertaining, and I just continued recording wrestling matches. But we shot a lot of interviews, there was a lot of behind-the-scenes footage, and after going through all the footage, I realized there was a real story there. And when I kind of thought back of everything that's happened, I believe I started, I think after 3 years, when I looked back, I noticed there was a big story. There was, getting hired by WWE, the Hepatitis C.
Specifically on WWE, before we go further to that, I remember when I talked to you when I was hired by WWE. What was your reaction?
Well, I remember specifically I was just walking outside, and I remember getting a phone call, and it was probably the most excited I've ever heard you, and I'll never forget how excited you were. But at the same time, I remember the phone call when you lost the contract, and it was pretty much the complete opposite. So I've heard both sides. So it's interesting to see both. And the movie really shows that. We go into detail about getting the contract and finding out about hepatitis C and then having to go through this hell. So the movie has been a very interesting project, and it's been an up and down struggle for sure, because it's not a pleasant story, unfortunately. No. And
but hopefully it'll have a happy ending.
Exactly.
In the long run.
It's the best way to look at things is positively and see what happens. But no, it's been a good project, and it's been very interesting to show, and I'm very excited to show it to other people and get some awareness about hepatitis C, because personally I wasn't aware of how popular hepatitis C is, how much it's out there, basically.
170 million people are known to have it. Yeah. Those are the ones that admit to have it. Those aren't the ones that are embarrassed to admit they have it, because let's face it, you've seen it. I've had a lot of negative reaction about Hep C. People do not understand what the disease is. A lot of them think it's only a drug user's disease. Blood transfusions can get it, dirty tattoo needles, organ transplants, sharing of razor blades. And speaking of sharing of razor blades, something that a lot of people don't know is, a lot of people have heard the story. It's been news all over the world on how I believe I contracted hepatitis C. Was by a wrestler named Larry Abdullah the Butcher Shreve, cutting me with an unsanitary razor blade in a professional wrestling match without my permission, which is assault. You can't cut people without permission with an unsanitary razor blade in a pro wrestling match. That's not a common or acceptable risk going into a professional wrestling match. You're not agreeing to the risk of death from sport. You cannot agree to that risk. But you're the one that actually discovered the footage of him doing that. So I remember during that time when I first found out I had hepatitis C, I suspected it could have been from him because we'd had a series of bloody matches together, but doctors were telling me that since blood flows outwards and these are relatively small cuts, that it would be very hard to be transmitted just from simple bleeding. So I asked you to look through the footage and see if there was anything unusual you could find, and you found something. You want to explain exactly how you found it?
That's right. You asked me to review the footage and see if there's any commingling of blood, and basically I looked for a lot of shots of basically any close shots of you guys together, but I did find in one match I found something very, very strange, something I've never seen before. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I saw Larry with his thumb do this motion on Devon's head about 4 or 5 times, and I wasn't really sure what it was. So the first thing I did was I called you, and then you explained what he was doing, because at the time I didn't know that Larry, he puts a razor blade onto his thumb, and basically he uses it to slice himself, and then he used the same razor blade on you. I didn't even know he does this. Personally, when I went back, I saw pretty much in the match that he constantly does that to himself. He basically cuts himself. It's very subtle. Most people won't notice it.
It's basically like a scratch, and if anyone's been ever cut shaving, you don't really feel a razor blade cut, and it's a time-honored tradition in professional wrestling. It's now banned by WWE. It's been banned by WWE since 2008. This particular match happened in 2007, a time when people were still regularly blading, which is what the practice is called.
It's still very popular.
Yeah, it still goes on in the minor leagues and on this company that has a show on Spike TV called TNA Wrestling. But basically the normal practice of creating the illusion that someone's making you bleed in wrestling is you either keep a little piece of razor blade in your wrist tape, or you tape it to your thumb, and when the time is right, you would take the blade and you'd make a little incision in your forehead, basically a scratch, and any cut in the head produces a lot of blood, and these things seal over pretty quickly, and they give the illusion that it's an actual chair. In Abdullah's case, that the fork is actually cutting you open, but no one in their right mind is going to agree to a match where they're actually going to get stabbed with a fork. So in that particular match, I was already bleeding from my own cuts from the head. So I don't know why he decided to cut me. He's cut newspaper reporters, he's cut photographers, not newspaper reporters that I know of, sorry, television reporters, as happened with a Rogers TV reporter in the past. He's cut lots of people without permission, and certainly if you look at the grooves on his head, there's certainly some kind of an obsession with cutting there without question. But I'm very happy you found that footage, because it answered a lot of questions, because without a doubt hepatitis C is passed by sharing razor blades, and we now know that Larry Abdullah the Butcher Shreve is hepatitis C positive, genotype 2, which is the same genotype that I have. So the lawsuit regarding this is ongoing, and I am very confident that I'm going to get justice in the end. But one of the reasons I went public about this lawsuit is because people are not aware about hepatitis C and the dangers of sharing razor blades. I don't honestly I think what he did was wrong and the assault was wrong, but I think in his mind, I don't even think the hepatitis C connection was going on in his head. It was just a irresponsible thing to do, unfortunately, and this disease is a terrible disease, and I hope coming out about this story, and I hope things like your movie help bring awareness to the disease and help prevent this from happening to other people, because it's certainly almost ruined my life. It hasn't ruined my life yet. I'm going to keep fighting. Victory is within reach. I can see victory, but I still have quite a battle to go. So we're actually going to show a little clip courtesy of Brennan Leffler, who was talking to Mr. Shreve. I believe it was back in 2011. Yeah, in October. Where Shreve actually demonstrates how he does the cutting on himself, and it gives you a good idea of how he did what he did to me. And despite presenting my lawyers with blood work indicating that he's hepatitis C positive, genotype 2, he still publicly denies having it, including stating to the Atlantic magazine, which is one of the oldest magazines in the U.S., that his blood was clean. So before we finish off with showing that video, and I see everyone again in week 19, which is the big milestone week for me, because I had to stop last time in week 19. Is there anything you want to say before we finish off?
I just want to wish you luck, and hopefully you won't have to go through anything of that sort again. And stay strong and keep going.
Thank you. I am going to defeat this, and we're going to spread awareness of this disease, and I predict a good future. And thank you everyone for watching. We appreciate it, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm not trying to hide nothing. I'm not trying to hide nothing.
Abdullah's head is a testament to his bloody craft. Permanent scars caused by deliberately cutting himself over and over again.
People like violence. That's number one. To draw people, to bring them back, you have to do what? You got to give them entertainment. This is the blade.
He showed us how he keeps the fans coming back.
Break it in half. And I would tape it from here, around like this. Now, for me to hit myself, I would hit myself like this.
He even bled for us.
You see it?
But he insists he doesn't have Hep C. And even if he did, he denies ever cutting Devon.
He has wrestled many wrestlers. You understand? So how can you say that it came from Abdullah the Butcher? If he was here right now, the first thing I would say to him, Devon, you know the way I use my blade, and you know the way you use your blade. You understand what I mean? Now, I have never cut you. You understand?
As for Abdullah's test results, he told us he was expecting them any day. We're still waiting. And so is Devon. But whatever the results are, Devon's health is destroyed, and his career ended.